Welcome to the podcast. Episode 3 is hosted by myself, Racer Dude, Zentor, and Xenon. Today's sponsor is AWES. AWES is your premium cargo insurance provider in Sirius, helping all factions unite the worlds through finance. All Worlds Enterprises and Securities is one of the active trading factions in Sirius, committed to assisting all groups with their lawful goals, including supplying, mining, transportation, and escort operations. That means, Zentor, we can't hold Cardamine on Salt Lake.
God damn it.
No, we can't. We gotta get sell it, I guess. So speaking of AWS, Zentor, I heard we found a lost puppy on the street.
Indeed, somebody was knocking on a recording booth today, so we decided to let him in. So today, joined with us is ViciousJeff, the founder and creator of AWS faction, and he is going to be introducing himself, his time on Disco, and what his faction has been up to lately, and what his goals are. So welcome, Jeff.
What's up, Jeff?
Glad to be here.
So, Jeff, tell us briefly about your finding freelancer, what led you to discovery, and where things are standing today.
Sure. Yeah. My start in freelancer was basically literally a $5 CD that I found in the bargain bin back in the early 2000s. It wasn't a game I was looking for, but it was something that that was the sequel to Privateer, which was a game that I loved, like way back in late 90s when that game came out after Wing Commander and all those. Like, I'm dating myself with all these games, but those are games that I played like crazy there in the old DOS boxes. Literally DOS on your computer. So I find freelancer, I play it like crazy. I actually put it on a local area network that I had set up way back then when I had multiple computers just kicking around and was playing around with different configurations. And then it kind of sat off to the side and I got into other things. So time goes by. I never even looked to see if there was any servers. So I don't have the experience in Discovery Freelancer that everyone else does, where they played back in 2008, 2009. I was busy playing other games. And then during COVID, everybody had more time to go online and play these games. So I was looking for different games, and I came across a strategy space game. I don't remember the name of it, but somebody in the comments, which I was browsing through to see if the game was any good, started talking about Discovery Freelancer. And I thought, wow, that's cool. There's actually a server out there that's active that plays a game that I used to really love. So I went, found the website, read up about it, and I installed it in early, I guess it was 2022. So yeah, then January I was messing around, and that was my beginning in Disco.
Cool. And so you are the leader of an IC faction. What's brought you to Interspace Commerce?
Well, initially I'd started off as freelancer because in my early days I was just trying to get a feel for the mod. So I was flying around everywhere. I started for freelance, or I went to Jira. I was doing US for a bit, trying to find the best commodity that would get me the most money in the shortest amount of time, just trying to min-max everything, but not realizing that there were ores out there. So I was doing it on the actual commodities, not doing any mining. I'm in the time zone that's basically the server is dead. There was like 6 other people that I would never run into. So I was just exploring. I was an explorer. Like, you saw my DHC transport going through Major at sometimes. If you were watching me on the server, it was just ridiculous where I was headed.
Like, this is where the money's at.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out what was there. Yeah, and all of a sudden everybody starts firing at me. It was a wild ride through there. I do remember that experience.
These guys out here have guns.
So that brings me back to I think to when everyone started playing. You're trying to make money to buy all the cool gadgets and toys and stuff. So for your trading, did you use any tools, or did you just buy what was cheapest and sell where it's going, then just do the same thing when you got to the location?
I basically used everything that was in game and nothing else. I didn't know about FL stats. I didn't know about any of the other options. Even though I had access to, I was kind of following a little bit what was going on the forum. I was basically just playing the game.
So old school.
Yeah, it's just
Nice.
old school. Yeah,
Jeff is like playing in the virtual box of freelancer, and it's like vanilla.
Yeah, I swear it was only on weekends when I had actual roleplay experience there, and then I started realizing how much I was doing wrong. Like the to learn. Like people pulled me over while I'm going through Gallia in the Ajira craft there hauling white boxes. Like I'm not even allowed to be there. And they're like, "Hey," I got pulled over by the police there. And at first, they hit my cruise, and I keep going, and they hit it again, and they're like, "Are you gonna stop? you got contraband there. Don't make me shoot you." So finally, yeah, exactly. Let me trade, damn it.
Now, during these moments, were you on a tag ship or were you flying Indy?
Oh, just flying Indy. Yeah, I made my own little tags there. I was still going under. I think my ship even had ViciousJeff in the name for a while there. Yeah, so it was just me.
I mean, that would be a deterrent for I guess a pirate, trying to come in at you if they see ViciousJeff and they're like, "Oh, that's probably not." And probably just freelancer doing missions.
Yeah, well, true enough.
So you get into multiplayer. You said 2022, you start flying around, doing some trading or exploring. You're finding yourself into the heart of nomad space, and everyone's shooting at you. So what? And then during that time, you're bouncing around different factions. You're just trying to find your fit. What was the moment where you decided I wanted to make my own faction, and why AWES? Where'd that name come from? And why'd you pick IC as the faction tag?
Okay. Well, there's a few stories behind that. So the the reason for the faction was I'd seen other people with tags around, and I thought, I should be making a group, kind of see if anybody will want to join. And the second reason was POBs. I finally found the thread about POBs, and I printed it up. I was going through everything. I wanted to see how they were done, and I looked at all the laws. I was just psyching myself up to putting a POB down. So then finally, my freelancer decides I made applications, and back then the governments were sort of hit and miss. Nobody was responding to me, or it was taking longer than I wanted. But Kasari responded to me within a day, and they let me go in a nice free zone right in Shikoku. And they even let me put on what they say I could put weapons on right away if I wanted to. And I was like, "Oh, that's great! I don't have to pay anything. I get a spot here that's not going to cost me a thing. I'm putting my base down right there outside of Deshima Station."
Sorry, it's just desperate for the attention.
Yeah, so that's what I did. I got all ready, and I was like, "Okay, I'm going to put my base down. I'm going to need shields right away." And I think I'd seen some sieges go up by then, so I was almost expecting that. So day one, I fill my base. Everything's okay. It's repairing. I think day two, everything was fine, and then by day three, I'm looking on my phone or on the computer, and I see the siege declaration. The GC want to come knocking on the door for my Core 1 base, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" So I managed to get out there just as I guess at the end of the 8-hour span, because of the timing of it all. It was like the end of the core server time, and it was getting late night, but they hadn't sieged it yet. So I pop out there on the only ship that I had on base, which was my base construction ship, and I'm out there facing 2 GC gunboats, and it just so happened that one of the regular role-playing Kasari Navy showed up, or maybe Kasari Police, and they were doing crazy RP, and they were sort of firing pot shots at each other, and I'm pleading my case, and thankfully Megara was one of the players there. So she kind of talked the situation down and said we were going to have like a separate conversation, and we ended up doing that on the forum. So the base was saved, and I got introduced to like another faction through that, which I'm still part of their faction, and I chat with her on a regular basis. So that was sort of nice to start to meet other players.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so that's how that, and that actually leads me to the IC thing, because I was still freelancer back then. But while I was running around, I had all these serenities, which I still do to this day. I've got like a whole group of one file that just got serenities on it. And I was doing all freelancer. And then later on, I ran into another player that wanted to do trading, and that was DavX, that used to be part of the faction. And he said, "Well, let's trade together." Like, he just contacted me out of the blue. It was great. And he said, "Oh, do you want to trade?" It's like, "Yeah, sure, okay." So we hung out, started trading, and then we started talking about actually doing the faction right. So, but we didn't want to just do it as freelancer. We wanted to make sure we had, some like we could access the 5Ks. But I was also looking at a shipping faction that had a more favorable what do you call it, rep with GC because where I was. So because Interspace has their GC connection, that was the main reason I went with them, not necessarily the 5K, but it was for the GC connection.
That's
It's
so
not
funny.
for the super neutral affiliation.
Yeah, because ever since we went to IC, then when I run into GC there, I play the supportive card there, and they still get paid. And although not that they ask as much anymore, but they know we're supportive, and we're not getting blown up by them or anything, or being
Nice.
threatened. So
You gotta plug the cause.
So as you know, like now, a lot of trading factions use IC ID, for the perks that come with it. So back then you didn't have any idea. You just chose it purely because it was neutral with GC.
yeah, honestly, I didn't know how neutral it was until I started looking at the other factions. It was more than just the GC because it said that right in the info card, like the GC neutrality as well as the Red Hessians.
Oh, that's really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
I actually never really looked at the IC ID. So like it specifically says in the info card that it about neutrality with. Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, actually, I'll pull it up right now. It is Interspace. Here we are, Interspace Commerce. Yeah. Oh, it doesn't have it in the base info card. It's I think it's on the reference on the website, on the forum.
Oh, okay.
Because the base info card on the game just says Interspace Commerce IC is one of the big three Liberty companies and runs insures cargo carried within the colonies and into the border worlds. But
on the ID, it has a line saying they have been known to have interactions with GC and Red Hessians.
Yeah, that's on the ID reference. Yeah, I remember coming across that, and that's why, like, during all the crap that went down in Rhineland years ago, like they were able to maintain Bond Station or something. There's some history there for sure. But yeah, that's cool that you actually went that route, the connection to GC, before you realized the very vanilla rep sheet that they have, which a lot of people go for IC historically because they're so neutral to so many people.
Yeah, I mean, if I appreciate the way the rep sheet is, but I also find that being that neutral it kind of kills a bit of the game for me when I'm flying around. Like especially like one area that comes to mind is Leeds right now, because they've got those mollies in Leeds, and that means nothing to IC going through there. They don't attack us. They're neutral. So I've seen these awesome little, they're fighting whatever ships are in the area, but they don't touch us. But mind you, I went through there with a freelancer when that was all set up for mining with few guns, and that was like the fight of my life trying to get away from that guy. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's one of Markham's little play areas, I believe, that where they played with really beefy NPCs going around. So a lot of people talked about that section of Leeds.
And that's interesting that you talk about that, because a lot of trading factions go to IC because of the neutrality, because they want to power trade, and because they want to make the money, or they don't want to be bothered supplying POB or materials to their POBs and things like that. So that's really cool that you mentioned that. You kind of miss out on those interactions, because even not only with NPCs but also too with the players. Because if you come across a player that like say a Red Haitian, they won't bother you. You kind of miss out on that interaction, as opposed to most traders today would favor that.
I wouldn't be so trustworthy of the Red Hessians, actually. The Red Hessians, even though they have some secret diplomacy with IC, they are known, especially if you're operating in their space, to shoot first, ask questions later. I set up an IC base years ago in Omega 11, and before I reached out to establish diplomacy, it was gone in less than a day. So
gotcha. How long ago was that?
This was 2020, I think. I was like, I'm gonna make a base, in my first base. I popped it out in Omega 11.
That might have been at the tail end of that group that Xenon was talking about, with his story to POB seekers. So maybe if you did it today, maybe a different story. But
Probably, yeah.
No, it's interesting because it's a credit to Jeff and credit to AWES because you guys are doing some awesome role play, and in my opinion, you're doing a trading faction right. You're interacting, and you're not just power trading and avoiding interaction. So that's
Yeah.
a credit to you guys.
Oh,
So before we jump to the topic, do you want to speak to anything that you guys have plans for or goals currently that you're working on?
well, goals. Like I'm trying to be more active in server activities. So that's where you saw me putting out a lot of events one after the other, because it's like we were still kind of going towards officialdom there. So it had to do with that a little bit, making sure that we were going to be assisting activity on the server. But I did enjoy it quite a bit, and I like the positive feedback I was getting, because back at the end of last year, we had sort of we had busy times in the summer, and then all of a sudden the events just stopped, and everyone was waiting for the patch, which they kind of still are, and and we had and one thing that I kept hearing from people is that they were dropping off because they had nothing to do. So I thought, well, if I give them, try to do this and try to do that to throw some events out there, then at least it's something. They can say, I'm logging in because there's a new event to try out, and there'll probably be some activity in this region. So,
That's great.
There's that. For the actual faction RP, I've sort of been pushing a science angle for like, one reason is that I was thinking about possibly going towards getting some SRPs for our faction, because we've already got our core 5, we've already got like we got official faction already. I'm working towards getting if anyone's seen my posts sporadically here and there, there's a cargo surveyors commodity that I'm hoping that'll eventually get adopted by the server, the server, so that we can actually have an IC commodity that's just special for us, like other factions had.
Very interesting.
Just trying to make it unique, because being Interspace on its own, we can't just sell insurance. There's nothing in game that we can do to support that. So we kind of need our own little thing. And I guess that's where I'm directing us.
So the cargo scanner you're talking about, is it like a scanner? It's just a boosted cargo registering range?
Well, no, it's surveyor. It's actually like a passenger type commodity. Because I was thinking we could be running liners or smaller craft, not necessarily the 5Ks that everyone sees Interspace in, and just make more money on the commodities with a smaller ship.
Oh, I see. Okay, so like almost like kind of like a yacht, like you're running a yacht across space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these surveyors, like, the reason I went with them is sort of the commodity we're going to try, is because at least it fits in with the insurance angle, and it fits in with how they like it in shipping, actual real world shipping. They've got these types of people that help determine exactly what the damages were when something happens out in the trade lanes or on the sea lanes. Well, I thought, why not have them in space and bases there? Like, somebody's got to be determining values. It kind of fits in.
That's true. That's interesting. Wow. Yeah, I never even thought of that. That's awesome. Okay, so you got that going on as far as SRP. Now, kind of swinging it back to IC, more of like the insurance and finance side of it. I remember, when we were pushing NSE, trying to get officialdom and trying to do all that, we were shooting for an angle to make you guys like our premier insurance broker or insurance company. And so are you still kind of pushing that at all, or are you kind of sidelining that for other projects?
Well, we've had an insurance program in place for a while, but it was more to try to push, instead of just buying the insurance, we wanted to create, I wanted to create activity involved in the insurance. So we were going to give it to everyone free, but you just had to run like 1 or 2 loads of cargo for us and then tell us about it on the forum. And then if you get pirated, we'll cover you 100%, or even for the next couple. But unfortunately, it wasn't adopted all that well. Like many initiatives there in Freelancer, it's sometimes they're hits, sometimes they're misses. So we do have insurance, but not a grand commercial business kind. Not to say we couldn't get into that, but it's just not something that's too many people have asked for. I think I had one other RP in Liberty regarding base insurance, and that's as far as it really went.
Yeah, there has been attempts in the past to try to make like a interspace commerce RP on the forum, but I think what happens is over time it becomes stale and kind of boring over time. And then you come along with all these great ideas and everything, but unfortunately the age of the trading factions are almost over. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. I think that may be the reason why. I know back a few years ago, when there were more trading factions like USI, Gateway, some others that were around, I think it would have caught on more. But yeah, and I was reading some of your posts with the finance and stuff and providing insurance, and man, maybe I'll start up ConX again and ask for insurance to try to get that plug-in going on the forum.
Yeah, sure. It makes for some good roleplay.
So
Do it. Do it.
One other thing. So you were talking about events going on. I remember the one main event you had going on, and you were sharing a funny story that it was the race. I believe it was out in Dublin, and people tagged. There's a tag race, and so is there going to be any future events like that going on? Any plans on the back burner?
The races are a story on its own there, because it was exciting, but it kind of has a conclusion to it too. Like initially, I set a base out there and I thought, okay, I'm going to put as many guns on it as I can. It's going to be basically racing under fire, and I'm not going to worry, like, because it's an independent system. I was hoping that Brett Gov there wasn't going to come and start counting the number of turrets I had out there, because in the end, I think I had 8 guns. Like, it was just basically, it had a shield. I think it still had a shield. I don't think I unshielded it, but everything else was guns. There was no cargo or anything. Like, whenever I had to upgrade something, I had to make sure that the base consumed the previous load before I brought the next load a lot of times, because every times I'd get there and it was still eating through it. So it was very interesting build. But the guns were also different with the change of the server, where guns don't fire first if a specific tag comes within range. That completely killed the concept for the racing under fire. So as soon as I saw that, then I knew the base was done, and I just decommissioned it. So, but it was a good event. Like, the event went longer than I thought. We had 5 different races. It was recorded by several people. We had good attendance. It got people excited about it, and that's really what I wanted to do with that event. So I will like to try to do something like that again. But on the other hand, the time zone for me is it's in the middle of my day. So it's hard for me to do that without having to completely interrupt everything else I'm doing just for a couple hours on Freelancer. So, I mean, it'll happen again, but just probably only once in a while, maybe quarterly.
Yeah, I'm noticing that too with a lot of events. Like, I'm having to kind of, if I want to do something, I have to kind of block off the day really to do it. I just remember you were in voice chat one day and people were tagging race, and wasn't it where the weapon platforms were shooting at the base was hostile to any tag of race, or something like that. And so people that were trying to get in early to like scope the track and stuff, every once in a while in Dublin you'd see someone get blown up by a hostile NPC because they're getting shot at by the weapons platform.
Yeah, it was great because they found out it. I before I'd finished it, I put in the F9 info, tag your ship as race dash to have the weapons platforms fire at you and enjoy the race. So someone finally figured it had been sitting there for weeks and nobody even noticed it. But someone decided to go and actually dock, and they saw that. And the next thing I know, there's a couple of ships that were. And as soon as I saw that, I made sure I got my supply ship over there and started chatting with them. And then that's when it built. When all of a sudden I had the pressure to put the race on, because I had a couple. It started out with 1, and then all of a sudden there were 2 or 3 that were racing. And they were asking, when's the race? So I had fast forwarded it. And then Britonia decided to give me money for the race as part of their supporting of it, because they wanted the activity there too. So it was really a lot of pressure it was good RP all around. And on top of that, I got sponsorships. So I had OSI giving me money. I had that mining factory Noose there in Frankfurt. I'm forgetting a whole bunch here. There was like 3 or 4 though. So they were handing me money and equipment. And even St. Denis there, he won that story event I was talking about, and he let me keep I think it was a Jump Drive 4 to give to the event. So they got BowX involved just by doing that. So yeah, it was really exciting. Yeah, I love that's one of the things about events and doing RP with Innerspace there is because they're everywhere, I can pull in from so many different groups. So whenever I think of the storyline, I try to think of who I can contact for it, and I make sure I contact them all if I can.
Well, that's
Definitely.
great. That's
Well,
a really. Go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, so like a kind of a side idea that we have with this podcast is kind of making like much shorter recordings, maybe doing some like advertisements and commercial like stuff. So yeah, if you got more events coming and we decide to go ahead and do that, spoiler alert, then yeah, definitely we'll do some fun commercials, you know, kind of get our noggins together, make some creative content and push for some events for sure.
Great. Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so your leadership of AWS has definitely been a unique take on the IC usage in the game. So that's a really fresh take on that gameplay. So that's really cool, your involvement throughout the server. So Xenon, you are the leader of basically one of the other really big trade hubs. AWS, in my eyes, has become one of the pillar trade hubs outside of NSE. Have you interacted much with AWES, and Jeff in general?
Yeah, we did. We interacted in role play. We created events together. We sponsored a lot of events and paid a lot of money.
Nice.
And I think AWES is very unique. I've seen so many interspace factions rise and fall on the server. Some of them tried to provide the real most important product of interspace commerce, which is insurance. It's the main thing for them. But also at the same time, I didn't see someone that makes so many programs. If you look at the AWES links, you will find so many programs for insurance, compensating people if they lose some things under some certain conditions. Of course, they get funded back by AWES in that program. And there are many other activities for that faction. I think it's very unique. With Jeff, he do a very good work there. A lot of good work. Yes.
Yeah, I've actually got a good story there about the first interaction I've had with Xenon, and how I knew that we'd be working together a lot, because we were trying to get our first barge for AWES even before we were official.
Oh yeah.
And we went and we were with me and DavX, and I think Gypsy was involved back then. We were pulling batteries in. We were mining the side data field there in Omega 11, and I think we got a few thousand. We got up to about 3,000. But Gypsy was sitting on billions of dollars, and he said, "Why don't we just buy the rest of it?" So we started looking for cheap side data, because really that's, if you want to buy a barge, then the way to go is to try to find somebody who will sell you a whole bunch of side data, but not at the full price, because then you can save billions of dollars doing that. So we had the idea, we're going to approach NSE and we're going to see if we can make a massive purchase of side data. So I contacted Xenon, and we got a hold of, we were chatting there, and we were talking about side data. And the only way I knew Xenon is I knew he sold equipment, and I don't know if I'd heard anything good or bad, but he was a businessman. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a hard stance against Xenon here. I'm going to get my deal. And it was so funny, because we started talking, and of course NSC's got side data at 3, and I wanted my 2.5, and then so I was ready to walk away. We're going to keep looking, and we came to an understanding, because Xenon knows the value of relationships in business, and he said, "You know what? You guys are up and coming. I want to do business with you. Let's make this happen." And we made that deal happen. We got our barge, and we've been working together ever since. So it's been great.
That's awesome. That sounds like a real world business interaction. That's
exactly.
Cool.
Yes, very much so.
That's great. All right, so let's go ahead and pivot to another topic now. One that we wanted to talk about before we get too crazy was. I'm going to edit this out. 1 second, guys. It's in the wrong channel.
Someone's not prepared.
I was flying through
A planet.
Pennsylvania and was like distracted by the wall of text that came up.
Is there a
Alright.
new wall of text in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, there is.
Oh boy.
All right, so what we're going to talk about now is our route of the week. Last time we were talking about the USI run from Planet Manhattan to Minato Harbor using Liberty Ale. Today, instead of an actual route, we're going to just briefly announce that the shipping bonuses per faction that exist in the forums under community feedback are going to be updated very soon by myself, and there should be some interesting new runs. If you have any input or feedback on those, I've gone through a lot of these factions, but some of them don't have current player groups that are active. So if there's anybody that wants to talk to me about like Rhineland shipping or Planet Form or any of those other ones, please hit me up on Discord and we'll see what we can come up with. But otherwise, those will be coming out probably in the next week. With that aside,
Can I say it?
Yeah.
Minato, Mr.
I knew you
Roboto.
were. I knew you were going to say
I've been
that.
wanting to say it for the whole bit. I'm like, man.
I was considering like giving you a window just to say it after I said Minato Harbor.
Mr. Roboto.
All right, so today's community topic is going to be one about story agency. It's been kind of a hot topic throughout the many years of Disco. And the core of this idea is a lot of players have kind of bucked against the dev world of having players drive the story forward. And a lot of times in the past, the dev world has resisted this and said, no, we're going to choose where story goes. So this is definitely a contentious thing for sure. And I don't know if there's a great answer, but I wanted to ask some of you guys what your take is, like what you think the current system looks like and what you would do to improve it. Racer, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. So yeah, I introduced this topic to bring on the podcast. So anyone listening, you may have noticed I was kind of poking around a little bit, asking some questions during the feedback. This has to do primarily when the topic of Liberty and Gallia, they're wanting to become more neutral, but it doesn't jive with the story currently, and so not to they don't want to swing it all the way to being best buddies. It sounds like they just want to be neutral. They're currently hostile. So the topic was really just kind of bouncing around in the admin feedback thread. First off, I think there should be a developer feedback thread. I don't know if there's one out there or not, but there definitely needs to be like a developer, and then even from there, kind of split up into different, maybe like art development, story development, economy development. Let the community be heard.
That's a great idea, actually.
Very good.
Yeah. My take on this community and the mod in general is this is the community's mod. I don't know that anyone really kind of dropped like big money down to create this thing and to buy developers to kind of get this thing going. I feel like this has been a continuous cycle since whenever this community really started out, like 2005, 2006, whenever developers started creating stories and new ships and factions started developing. This has been a continuous cycle since then. So this is I've said it before too on the forum. When our actions now are respecting what has happened before us, there's a lot of people that put a lot of work into what the mod is now, and quite frankly, I think the mod is incredible, the way it's working nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to think that the community should have some say in the story, but there definitely should be there should be responsibility both with the player base and with the development staff. The player base has a duty to provide feedback, but quality feedback. I often joke, and we know the names. There's some people that they'll come in and they say, "Oh, this sucks." Well, okay, well, why does it suck? Oh, it's dumb. Okay, nothing's happening there. There's other people come in, quality feedback, but then nothing happens from it, or they don't feel heard or anything. That's where the developers and Zentor, you've done a great job of this, not only receiving it from players, but also kind of yourself going out into the community and getting into the face of some players and saying, what do you guys need? What can I develop here? And I think that's the job of the developer, is to listen to the quality feedback and create an environment that the players feel at least heard. I feel like right now that's not necessarily being happening, based off of what the feedback from the admin feedback came from. There's going to be some ideas that aren't going to be in line with where the story is currently going, or maybe the story has an idea of where they want to go. So if they hear feedback from the player base, well, it might go against the grain of what they're currently trying to do. So I feel like there definitely needs to be some more transparency between the development staff, and the player base. And some recent events that took place in the game, some players feel like they're not in control of their destiny, therefore they don't feel a need to play. And I feel like that's a lot of players that no longer play. I think that's where they sit, and that's why they no longer play, is because it's, with it being role play, they feel that they should be in some respects in control of some of their destiny. So, go ahead.
Just to pop in, I do think that if you were to take a grand survey of all the people that have left Disco, you would find that out to be true largely. That whether it's necessarily story, probably a lot of it is story, but in general, the disconnect between the community and the direction that the mod eventually goes is not in sync. And I know you can't exactly like paint a straight line from community input and then execute it as a development staff. But I don't think that there's enough player agency currently. There's enough of a window between the player community and the direction of development that's actually happening. So yeah, I do think that a lot of people have left over, they feel like they're an unheard voice. Just to pop that in. If you wanted to continue that, that's cool, or we can move on to everyone else.
Yeah, I was just kind of mumbling on there, but yeah, that's one point of view of the whole thing, is that I do think that the player base should have some control of where the story goes, and it includes events, and that if a lot of, from what I heard recently, and I agree with, is if you're going to hold an event, and it's going to be there's a destiny to that event, it needs to be advertised beforehand. Otherwise, it could easily create an event, and if you have one outcome, you have a story set up for that. If you have a different outcome, you have a story set up for that. And I think that issue can be, to your point, Zentor, can definitely be fixed with better communication between developers and players. And just and I get it. There's some players out there that they don't provide good feedback, or they're in favor of their specific faction or their group, so they're going to provide the feedback accordingly. But I definitely think players should feel more in control of their destiny.
Yeah. And real quick, just to say, I don't think that story can be driven entirely by player input. And I know that there is definitely channels available to players now in order to connect the story team. They've made this clear. I just don't think that it's as easy to connect like the community will with what's going on in story. But Xenon or Jeff, do you guys have any input or ideas on this?
I'd like to see players have some input. Like I agree with, on the admin and the dev side, that major storylines should not be affected by events. But it would be nice to see within every major story, you've got little nuances that could go one way or another. Like if you've got a grand idea that this side's going to come out ahead, they could still lose a few battles before something grand happens to completely change the balance and bring it back to where the story wants it to go. So I would kind of having players interaction actually means something in game. And we had a brief conversation, Zentor, about the use of solars, and we were talking about POBs and like things like that could be used. Like, why not have the results have like just a temporary POB that has a skin on it representing the outcome of an event, just so it's something different in game to show that their actions made a difference. And then
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's just simple little things. It doesn't have to be a massive undertaking or anything. Just something to show that the effort was worth it.
Yeah, and I think that events have often gone one way or the other, where they either tell players that this event won't really matter to the grand story, and then they actually have residual impact, and the player factions are very upset about that. Or also, events don't really like they will have impact, but then they don't have any impact. So it's kind of both ways. If there was more clarity in that, and a little bit more community impact or input, I think that would be more rewarding for the grand community.
So definitely the theme I'm getting is clarity and transparency. The one thing to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, Jeff, with what you were talking about, is if you do have a series of battles and then suddenly the war changes the other way, as the player in those battles, I wonder if they would feel like, oh, still, what's the point? But to what Zentor was saying is, if that's explained beforehand, like this is the way the story is wanting to go, that could better smooth over those battles. That, hey, we're winning these battles, shouldn't we win the war? That kind of thing.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that might play into the clarity aspect, where at least the story team and the devs can let players know that it's only incremental. It's not incremental cumulative where you're going to change the major storyline. And like if you don't do that, then yeah, I could see how there could be misunderstandings where somebody thinks that if they win 5 battles in a row, they're going to win the war, when really there was no hope of them winning the war because that's not the way the story was going.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So like, yeah, just revealing that this is a small little, kind of like in a Omega 5 where the Red Haitians and the Corsairs are kind of doing their fighters, fighting, but in the grand scheme of things, there's bigger battles happening elsewhere.
Yes, I mean, even the more recent Erie event, to be honest. I wasn't there. I don't really know the full details. I watched a bit of one of the streams, but I heard through other people that there was a huge zoner turnout, and that the zoner huge turnout really didn't matter because the story was going to go in Liberty's favor regardless.
Yeah, I not to kind of bash on that event, but I have heard some things about that event. The one, I don't know if they had an NPC transport or something, or a flagship that they had a admin shield on it, but the zoners were able to destroy the shield itself and then start damaging the ship that wasn't supposed to have received any damage. And then
really?
then the ship disappeared, respawned, full health, full shields, because that's what they wanted the event to go towards.
Oh my gosh, lovely.
Yeah. And that wasn't specified beforehand. So kind of going back to the original point of clarity, and because I feel in some respects, like Jeff, you've got AWES, you're building the faction, you have a direction where you want that faction to go. It's an official faction. Therefore, I feel like within the Discovery universe, it is now canonized, at least from the point of when it became official to the point when it may no longer be official, or until Discovery goes away. So during that time, I feel like it is an official faction. It is canonized in the Discovery lore. So if the story changes to where, for whatever reason, AWES is hostile with Liberty, you'd kind of be pretty upset about that. Like, this is not the direction I want my faction to go. We're lawful traders and financial people. But situations like that have happened in the past with other people's factions, where things have changed without their control, and it kind of messed up their lore. But if that's open, if people came down and say, hey, we want to go this direction, we want to have the companies kind of blow up in Liberty, we want to create this new edgy story, what do you think? as opposed to just dropping it on you. That'd be a
Right.
different response.
Some input would be great that way. And to speak to your point about the event at Erie there, there might have been a lot of zoners, but can you imagine if that happened on every event where everyone wanted to just one-side it, and then the admins and the devs playing the event were like the only other side, that they could drastically affect a lot of the outcomes of these stories. And
you're talking about the Gallic War now, then.
Oh, probably. I was before my time. Remember, I don't know any about that.
But the kind of reinforce the developer side. What do you do if you have an event like that and 100 owners?
That's why I say that this topic is a really contentious thing, because I don't think that there is a perfect answer at all. And there's no real way to say, yes, we need to only listen to players, or yes, we only need to listen to the dev team. It's a really difficult topic. So I don't know if there is a good one.
I think so. I've used this metaphor. I think everyone here is familiar with like WWE or WWF, like wrestling. The story has a direction where they want to go, and then they put the wrestlers in the ring to tell that story. So they do their wrestle. It's clear who's going to win and who's going to lose. So to some extent, I feel like the players should feel in control of their destiny. But if the story development is good and the community is behind where the story is going, like for example, say Rhineland is invading Liberty, just throwing something out there, and everyone's filling up the Rhineland side. Well, if it's clear that Rhineland's going to win this great battle, but we still need players to fill this event that we're going to tell the story of this great invasion. And okay, story's great and everything. I want to be a part of this battle. I might be inclined to join the Liberty side, even though I know we're going to lose. The event is designed for us to lose, but if it's clear beforehand, I want to be an actor in that play. And I feel that's what sometimes it's missed, and that's not what's communicated with some of these events.
Mm-hmm. Xenon, what do you think about all this?
I actually like almost everything that Racer Dude said. And I would just spotlight on one of the things he said. He said, developers feedback thread. That's a very good idea. And he said, people should be having a role in driving the story. I understand that it needs a lot of balance. And everybody might try to drive the story according to what he wants, what he plays, what he favors, despite of the what it's needed to be done from balance. They will not look to that. I understand. Mm-hmm. But it is very important to have the voice of the players. If the players manage to feel that they are using the rudder, directing the boat of the events, they will stay, they will play more, they will bring more ideas, they will start more RP. They will be very happy because they play something that they have a voice in. It's very important and very complicated. I understand.
Right.
I also understand that the developers are putting a lot of work for free. They don't get paid. It is part of their time, their effort to provide what they are providing from the story. I understand why they would say, no, we close the door. Nobody's going to affect the direction of the story. We're going to put that alone, by assigning someone that can be a story developer and so on. I understand the reasons why they are afraid, because it requires a lot of balance. When you're going to listen to so many ideas, if you open the door for the community, they will contribute a lot.
But at the same time, I think that's to be expected. If you go into the role of a developer, I see it as a public servant role. I mean, my enjoyment from doing any development work is a direct feedback loop of seeing the players enjoy what I've been able to work on. So I do think that if you're doing good development work, it's because you're creating an enjoyable environment for the community.
That's correct. That's correct. I was just saying that people should consider that those factors. Developers work for free. The amount of work need to be, not a lot, so they can do it, or maybe they need to increase their team.
Yeah,
I
certainly.
wanted to ask that. Does anyone know when the last time there was an open recruitment for a developer position?
So according to Haste, they're always looking for folks. It's just not openly announced a lot. When I was leading econ, I announced when I needed new folks, but I just don't think there's that communication that goes out. But yeah, they do often. And I know at least as of a few weeks ago when I was speaking to him on the subject, he said that they could always use more help.
I posted an application on that when you asked for developers for the economy.
Jeff did as well, and a difficult decision. Honestly, it came down to um a couple other people did too, actually. But the current at the time, so it's different now a little bit because Haste has worked on some scripting tools. But at the time, economy editing work was eye-twitchingly cancer. I mean, it's fucking annoying. It's staring at a lot of raw data and trying to make sense of it, and you're trying to work over a decade or more of really poor decisions, duplicate commodities, and just a lot of bad file entries, and it's just a pain in the ass. And honestly, it came down to uh, I could use your creative input more than I could use you laboring under that weight.
So
So
I was just about to say, I hate to interrupt you, Zentor, but I was just about to say that is really, if you really think about it, we, the player base, can be developers. As long as the lead developers in their department are open to that feedback. So Zentor, you're a shining example of that. Somebody that has a trading faction out of, out of Kusari, if they identify that, hey, this trade route isn't really good, but this trade route, like everyone does this one trade route, that's feedback you can hear, and then that would prompt you to tweak some numbers and maybe uh, move a commodity to this planet, or take one away, or some. You would change that because ideally with economy you want variety. You don't want everyone doing just that one trade route. We want variety. So that's kind of where it's that is the player base responsibility, is for us to tell the developers the feedback, what's going on with the economy, and then
yeah,
for the developers to take the rational from the irrational, and then take all the rational feedback and then apply it accordingly.
yeah. So I've always seen economy's development as trying to, like, there's some lag in my eye between what we're writing for economy development and what's going on current events wise. But my goal has, I mean, I'm not the economy dev right now, but my goal at the time was always to bring the needle of the economy as close to the current events, as current factions are relevant as possible. And yeah, so listening to very active player factions, Jeff, Xenon, other folks that are doing a lot of hauling and mining, that was definitely a super valuable aspect that I was looking for. I think that we've beaten this dead horse, guys.
Yeah, I'm ready to move on. What's next on the menu here?
All right, so something I wanted to speak on briefly is in my last episode, I talked a little bit about some of Eingar's work recently. He's the dark wizard of coding right now, and he's making some really fancy and awesome changes. And one of the really exciting ones has been something that's been talked about for a very, very long time. It's regards to POBs, and that is the idea of universal factories. So before I left, I was working on refineries and updating the modules, and he is taking a completely different more simplistic and easier to maintain look at this, and is going to be reworking all of the POB production lines into a very simple crafting list type situation.
Wow.
Yep.
So
Eingar, I hope you're listening to this, man. You're awesome. Like we worked together a little bit, before all this, but man, Eingar, you're awesome.
yeah, so with this, you're going to be able to do like a /build command, and it will come up with, I think it's /build space info or something along those lines, and it will show you all the buildable modules that you can currently make on your base.
Wow.
And once you've made that, once you've selected one to be built and you choose its recipes or whatever, when that module is built, you can do a /craft command, /craft space info. It will show you all the craftable recipes for that particular build module. So you could do /craft space like code name factory or whatever the basis factory is. And this really simplistic approach, you don't have to deal with the way it is right now with you have to put in like an index number and then the item choice number to select. You can actually much more simply create a product in your base, and you don't have to go through the crazy long console messages to figure out what you're trying to build. And with this, you'll be able to have multiple tiers in the future. So maybe one day there's going to be like a tier 2 production factory of code names, for instance, that's faster than the regular one, or any of the other ones. So from what I understand, when this rolls out, all of the currently existing modules will patch over and exist on the new system. The commands will just be different. It's just going to be overall just a much cleaner system. And this will also allow refineries to exist. So they will come out with the patch as well, as far as I understand. So you'll be able to convert raw ore directly into metals and then move those around the game for more of a dynamic economy feel.
Exciting stuff.
So lots of under the hood work. So great job, Eingar.
Yeah, it's just it's just gonna revolutionize the economy. It's one thing to just pick up an economy or a commodity from like a planet and drop it off to another planet, and then that's it. But I think when we get something where we can move it somewhere and then see it produce into something else, that's just going to revolutionize the economy. And maybe AWES needs to get their insurance ready, because maybe some trading factions will come back and we'll see an increase in trade again, and increase in pirates. Pirates will come back, want to get a little cut of the action, and some of the lawfuls want to come back, and there we go. We got some player base back.
Nice. Well, we'll be
Right.
ready there. Just might need higher premiums.
Exactly. So with the system, since it'll be entirely configurable through the admin access, you won't have to do patches for new modules and new additional production lines for POBs. So you can even have like an SRP research factory of some sort, something that's been created through a player RP, or particular item. So the item itself might need a patch in order to get in the game, but just adding new custom build lines is going to be possible. So that's pretty exciting too.
For sure. One group I wanted to plug kind of real quick, Starflyers. Looks like they're going for officialdom.
Oh yeah, I saw that thread this morning.
Yeah, to Jeff's point right there. Looks like Starflyers have come back. Kusari's come back. I don't know his roster currently, so if you're looking to get into some science research kind of a role play and in-game fun, Starflyers, go for them. Don't want to talk too much about them right now. We'll have maybe Kusari come on sometime soon to talk more about what the Starflyers are up to.
Yeah, definitely.
And then another thing is, would the owners of the missing luxury liner in New London please post?
Yes, for the love of God, somebody is trying to reach you on the forums.
Oh my God! So I know who that is, and I know
Mordecai,
that
please answer Mordecai.
I know the story behind it. So would either an admin finally just do what he wants, or would the owners just show up? Because that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, that long BB code is starting to look like an operating system load. So please, for the love of God, answer the man.
yes.
So I have to sympathize with him a little bit there because I've done RPs that haven't been answered, and I've retransmitted and retransmitted until I got my answer. You know this, Racer.
Boosting
You remember that?
transmission. Boosting transmission.
I think I won a bet on with Racer there based on my persistence with the RP. on one particular faction.
Boosting transmission.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, this specific thing, it was like this luxury liner. Apparently, it traded hands multiple times, and it's unclear who the owner is right now. So they're just kind of pinging out to whoever the owner is, but I don't think the owner plays anymore. So maybe the admins can just give it to this person. Maybe.
Say, Dennis, I know you're not listening to this, but
Yeah, I know
somebody tug his sleeve, please.
I know you're not listening to this. That's awesome. What about who's our other admins?
Slappy, Tunical. I think
Slappy.
that's it.
You think Slappy would listen to this?
He's an
Slappy?
Aussie. No, maybe
Slappy?
he does.
Yeah,
Then like-
Slappy.
He's from the Fire Nation, so.
Fire Nation. Come on, Slappy, do something. Poke it with a stick.
All right, so
I'm just gonna say, just use the same tactic there. Just send them a link every day on the same time.
yes,
They'll go through it,
boosting transmission.
or you'll just get blocked. One or the other.
Certainly.
Mordecai just send a PM to Slappy in St. Dennis every single day. Every single time you boost signal for this post, you should just send the link to St. Dennis and
Yes.
Slappy.
Very effective and fast way to get banned very fast.
Yeah,
Probably.
but it would be so much fun.
Indeed. All
I
right,
think the
so
whiskey has kicked in here.
yeah,
EOB cast in no way endorses this behavior.
yes, that's right.
But it does find it hilarious.
Yeah, it's definitely entertaining.
Oh,
All right, so
boy.
you've heard another episode of the podcast. This has
Sorry.
been Zentor, Racer
Thank you for
Dude,
your time.
Xenon, and Jeff, and we hope to hear you guys on the next one.
Dan Full, take care of yourselves and each other.
Take care, buddies.
Take care, everybody.